Welcome to another episode of Talking with Kevin and Son, where we showcase people you should know. Now, let me take you back a little bit. My guest, born in Harlem, New York, our guest was exposed to music early on in his life. Our guest used to wake up to the sound of Congo drums and cowbells being played on the fire escapes in Spanish Harlem, New York. Listening to the top 10 songs being played by a DJ during the summer on his AM radio, he used to wake up and watch the Beatles and other groups on the Ed Sullivan Show. Does this sound like an intro to a Hollywood feature film? Well, the music and the entertainment industry has had his eyes on this young man, since he was a little boy. So much he used to sit outside and listen to the music and watch the entertainers come and go of clubs like the Copacabana, the Cotton Club. He was too young to go in, but he was old enough in order to love the music. Our guest as an adult has been all over the world, and the music has molded him and transported him to the story that we're about to hear. No one ever talks about the life of a person on the road known as a roadie, but today we have a story that needs to be told, a story that should be told, a story that maybe should be a Hollywood feature film. Before I go on to welcome my guests, I want to first say and take care of a little business. All right. This episode of Talking with Kevin and Son and the People You Should Know is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is very simple. Through the power of our voice and our story, we want to uplift, inspire, share our stories and experiences, and create a framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple: hope, helping other people every day. So, ladies and gentlemen, it sounds like a story is too good to be true. It sounds like we're going to tell the stories and the secrets of a roadie, and maybe that may happen. If you stay in long enough, tune in. We'll talk about some of the feature groups that he's been part of: the Ohio Players, Lionel Richie, you name it. I'm going to list. I mean, he's got a list that's so long I can't even say them all day long. But I want to welcome our guest. His legal name is Douglas Stuart Gray. We know him as Stuart. Welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, Stu?
Well, thank you, Kevin. I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Man,
Um,
this is a long time coming.
yes. We've been uh, family for a long time, and sometimes now we're meeting. Sometimes your family is extended until now. We've been parallel in this music life and family for a long time. I want to thank the organization and your podcast members, and I want to say hello to all listening and watching. Uh, Please forgive me. I'm on September 8th. This is today's the 2nd of October. On September 8th, it
Let,
just passed. I turned 68 years old.
let's not date the show already. Let's
So,
not date. Um, because I know your music life started probably the day you came out of the womb. I want to take us back before you became a roadie
sure.
and explain to people what a roadie is. A roadie is the real team, the first team that sets up, that makes sure that our entertainers, members of the Commodores, members of the Ohio Players, members of the OJs, member of Ray Goodman and Brown, and some of these other associations you have. They get there on time, make sure their luggage gets there on time, gets the stage set up, do the sounds checks. People don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So I want to talk about you before you became, part of music history. And we'll talk about that at the end of the show about we have now created a Hall of Fame for roadies, especially Black entertainers. We'll talk about the good and the bad, but I
Mhm.
want to know how you came up in the business. I want to know your story. Now, let's start, high school. Talk about your parents and their interaction with you, who mentored you. So if you don't mind, take us back a little bit, close our eyes, and let us know who Stuart or Douglas Stuart Gray was before he became a roadie. And then we're going to segue on how you became and got your first job and how that happened. We'll talk about the good and the bad. So go ahead and share that with our audience.
Well, fantastic. I was, I was born in 1955, and the music was very organic in Harlem, USA. So we had all the radio stations and all the entertainers in our neighborhood. I'm from Uptown Harlem, close to Sugar Hill. And when I was younger, I knew I never thought I was better than anybody, but I knew I was different or special. And the first uh, time I realized that, when I went to from my school, I brought a white boy home to spend the night, to spend the weekend at my house in Harlem. And at that time, that was kind of a no go for the neighborhood kids that I was hanging with. So I had to almost fight every day my friends until we went to the basketball court. So moving forward, the high school that I went to was Cathedral. I went to PS 28, which is in Harlem, 155th Street and Amsterdam Avenue, which is one of the most famous grade schools in the city, PS 28. And what made it extra famous is it was the nucleus and the start of what's called a drum and bugle corps, which is a military style of an organization that plays instruments, live instruments. And I was a snare drummer. So we had a full band and, all the other instruments. And I didn't read music, but I could imitate anything that I heard almost immediately. And what I heard in imitation, mostly in the radio, was James Brown. James Brown had, in those days, there were some famous disc jockeys and famous radio stations, both on AM and FM. And James Brown, on their lists of weekly or monthly lists, James Brown had 4 records in the top 10, 4 to 6 records at a time in the top 10. So, and my parents, my father was the first wave of African American city bus drivers in New York City that got good city jobs coming out the service. And there was a Black African American, kind of segregated section, that our depot was uptown at 145th Street. My father played dominoes and was kind of, one of the favorite guys around. And he drove a city bus in New York. And I was the kid that sat behind him coming home, on his routes. I would get on the bus and sit behind him and watch and roll through neighborhoods, and just watch him just do his thing. And my mother was the assistant to the head man at a health clinic on the corner of 152nd Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. And that health clinic became the breath of the 1199 Healthcare Workers Union. Before there was any unionization of healthcare workers, her little clinic started 1199, I think is the healthcare union for nurses and assistants and nurses assistants. And my father had every record. My father was back then records were, very, very obtainable. Wax. And my father had all the Charles Mingus and modern jazz quartets. And my mother was into the Billy Ecksteins and Cab Calloway and the Duke, and the Duke himself. And of course,
none of the kids listening to this knows what a record looks like, right?
A wax record, and the first record player that I had 4 speeds, because the records were made in 78 speed, 45 speed, 33 speed, and 16 speed. And we had all of the intonations of those. I had records that was 78 that were more down south blues, and sort of those records looked like they were made from one central microphone in the room, and the scratches and the pops were, and then the 16 records were the slower ones. And, finally the industry made 33 and a third speed, but, and then like you said, so music was always, we were always dancing, or, to music was central in everything, going out to block parties. Somebody had a record player or was playing music. And I remember living in Harlem, going down 7th Avenue and Lenox Avenue in the middle of the summer. People would put their radio speakers outside the windows, and all you can hear were Marvin Gaye and the Four Tops and Aretha and the,
Temptation.
the gospel, yeah, Amelia Jackson, and the Gladys, and music just everywhere. People carrying radios, and so sports and radios, basketball and music kind of went together. Another short story on my block. I lived on a block that on one side it was 5 blocks from 150th to 155th, all connected with no cross streets. And on the other side were the cross streets, 151, 152. So after, after so many years, I realized that every Christmas, all of the kids on my block got the same presents. All the kids got 10 speeds one year. All of the kids got skateboards one year. And one year, all of the kids on my block got unicycles. Now, the reason the mothers made that situation happen, because they didn't want her kid stealing a bike from her kid and having that issue. Now I got to go up in your neck because your kid knows. Why is your kid? Because he had the better bike. He had a bicycle that you didn't get on Christmas. So it was, and that's how a village raises a child. I couldn't do dirt down the street because I'm gonna tell your mother 6 blocks away. I'm like, I can't get away with nothing around here because it's 6 blocks over here. Ooh, I'm gonna tell your father. And so the year that we got unicycles what's the first thing we do after we learn how to ride them? Go to the basketball court. There was a guy named Charles King, an adult, young adult, who noticed and came and talked to some of the kids. Long story short, that became the King Charles Riders for the Ringling and Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus lifetime contract. They played basketball on unicycles from the kids in my neighborhood.
It's amazing that you brought that up. It's not like that anymore. It used to be, you did something wrong. The neighbors caught you before your parents caught you. And then when your parents caught you, you got caught. And it was never a dispute of, if you did it or not. It's the fact that someone knew you said you did it, so you had to do it.
Right.
We need to go back to developing those type of relationships and having those type of communities, and looking out not only for our own children, looking out for the children that within it, because it does take a village. It does. We need to go back to the old school family values. Is that where we sit on the porch and we listen to music? We understand what the sound of music sounds like instead of what is computer generated. We need to know what a human voice and what harmony sounds like and what music really feels like when it touches your soul. Instead of just putting out sound, remember those days when the music had a message? When you didn't have game, You played a song to a young lady. She said the same.
And fortunately, in our schools, there were instruments we could touch and feel and figure out which one we liked the most, which instrument called us, and which instrument we attracted to. I picked up the drums and percussion, but in grade school growing up, I played the steel pan, the recorder, and I never picked up a guitar, nothing like that, but it was mostly drums.
So music had your soul a long time
And it
before
was
you.
all, yeah, it was too easy. And then, the instruments were there. You could, in school, it was part of the curriculum. Touch this instrument, feel this instrument, get a violin, get an oboe, get a trumpet. And then you see the guy down the street. So I hooked up with four guys in my neighborhood and we started, a little combo. And then lightning struck.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Lightning struck.
Then
Now we're
like then
now we're getting all the keys and the secret to the story. But before lightning struck,
right.
define for us, and then we'll come back to this story because
Yeah.
people want to know what's a roadie.
Well, back in the day, a roadie was a guy who any it was any guy who worked for the performer. It turned out to be a kind of a 24-hour gig. You became an assistant to the powers to be, whether it was you know and there was a ladder of importance and professionability. There was a manager and another manager, and the performer had his say of what he wanted to happen. And a roadie was a term kind of made up by probably the more pop groups, the from England, Rod Stewart's and the Who and those bands. They were called roadies. They set up the band. They traveled with the band. Beach Boys had their roadies live with the band. Come live with us because you're going to be the part of us the part of labor that we don't want to do.
Right, right.
We want to sing and play, but we don't want to have to break and tech our stuff down and put it in the we you know it, and it moved from them assisting to them to roadies taking over.
All right. So we got the definition out of the way. So I want to go back to where lightning struck and you're starting to warm up. So take us where you were going to take us before. And listeners, enjoy the ride.
Lightning struck. Growing up in Harlem, I had three godfathers that witnessed my baptism. They were my father's army friends, buddies. They were the little clique, the posse from that neighborhood.
They have names?
I grew up with them. They raised me. One of my godfathers' name was Louis Chisholm. He turned out to be a dentist.
All right. All right. I just wanted to make sure when you said Louis Chisholm,
Right.
I I did a research. I was a research writer on a film that ultimately became it was the Bumpy Johnson story. And
Okay.
Chisholm, the person I spent time with in Harlem. That's not your uncle, is it?
No, no, that wasn't him. He was a straight and narrow, a nerd. He wasn't no kind of cool, but he was tall and light skinned and had green eyes. So he was a looker. He was probably, had dusting off. He was probably dusting it off on the regular.
Yep.
And then my other godfather, Richard Dixon, he was my uncle Sookie. He became he was a travel agent. His business, after he came out the army, he turned into travel agent. And that travel agency was located in one of the bottom storefront properties in Lenox Terrace. Lenox Terrace was upscale, middle class residences for Harlem residences. And um, he was, and then my other godfather was Benjamin Ashburn. Now, my Uncle Benny was a brand ambassador for the liquor companies. So he was a liquor wholesale. He was dealing with the Cotton Club, Apollo, Minton's, Baby Grand, all the Red Rooster, all the spots where John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Cab Calloway were hanging out. Through my godfather's office, I met Betty Davis.
Uh-oh.
To the office, Kevin. And I had no idea what Daisy Duke shorts are on a female. And she came in, her boots looked taller than me. Then she had nothing but skin and the Daisy Dukes like this much material. All right. Pockets hanging out of where the belt line was, and raw talking, and my godfather, these guys came up from Alabama, young boys from college. And my godfather had been dealing with Small's Paradise, which is Wilt Chamberlain's. Wilt Chamberlain had a club in Harlem.
I'm familiar.
It's called Small's Paradise.
Yep.
And the reason he called it Small's Paradise because he was a bit taller than anybody else.
Right.
So these kids came in and they had live entertainment. All of these clubs had live entertainment, whether it was one guy on the trumpet or a trio or a 6-7 piece band flailing away. These guys came up from college and they absolutely were terrible. First time in New York, maybe it was nervousness, the jitters, they didn't have it together, but they talked to my godfather, Benny, and he saw something and said, industry talk. When you get your act together, come back and see me. Sent them back home. Maybe a year later or so, whatever, they came back and knocked on his door. Now, that's rare in any type of industry because in between the time they went back home, anybody else could have gotten in their ear. They could have aimed at somebody in Atlanta. They could have aimed at somebody in Birmingham. They could have aimed at somebody in New Orleans. They came back to New York, probably knowing that this is the place where we have to start this, right?
Right.
The group turned out to be the Commodores.
Lionel Richie and the Commodores.
The original drummer got drafted.
I remember that.
Drummer got drafted to the Army. And my godfather, knowing how much I love music, gave me the drum kit.
Wow.
So I take the drum kit home. My mother, says, listen, it's either you getting in this room, in this bed, or the drum kit. But both of y'all ain't living here together, right? Get this drum. I took the drum kit on my roof. We lived on the 6th floor of our apartment building, which was the top floor of our apartment building, and right over the front door, I took the drum set on the roof. Now I'm playing on the roof, and I'm getting a crowd of kids now. Now our ceiling is cracking from the bouncing. My mother said, "Get these right." My godfather takes the Commodore straight to Motown. The story's been told, and I asked,
what's the story?
The Commodore story. This is how they got straight to Motown. In Harlem, my godfather knew Suzanne DePass. She was a local A&R person in New York and the East Coast. And being in a club situation, my godfather knew Suzanne DePass. Suzanne DePass brought the Jackson 5 to Berry Gordy. Suzanne DePass brought the Commodores to Berry Gordy. We went straight to Motown. just like it was supposed to be. He didn't get any other. He said, okay, Motown, boom. Don't want to talk to nobody else. So now you know the story. Lionel Richie just was the headliner at the King's inauguration, coronation in England.
Right.
So that's our boy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are talking to Douglas Stuart Gray. We're listening to the untold story, the original story of life on the road as a roadie. He has his name and his presence has been associated with groups like the Commodores, the Fatback Boys, GQ, Force MD. I think he's currently, and you can correct me, working with Ohio Players. He has worked with the Marquez, Cameo, Sky, New Edition, Bobby Brown, Biv, and DeVoe, High Five, Najee, Freddie Jackson, Johnny Gill, Rick James, Tina Marie, the OJs, Gerald Levert, Regina Bell, Ashford and Simpson. The name goes on and on. I don't see Gladys Knight's name down here, but I see LL Cool J, Karen Usher's name down here, Della Soul, the Goody Mob. There's a lot of people. George Howard, Ray Goodman and Brown, Keith Sweat, Drew Hill. Oh man. I thought I met a lot of people in time, but what was your first job as a roadie? Who gave
All
you
right.
how did that come about?
Um, my mother got a job for me on 125th Street. She knew the district manager or the head guy for the health, education, and welfare Department of Social Security Administration in Harlem. There's an office building, and she got me a job there as a G1, a mail in the mailroom clerk. Right, I'm a G1, and I'm having to show up, and I have a supervisor. And my godfather took me out of that job. And the first place I ever went down south was Tuskegee, Alabama. And he put me on the road with the Commodores. I was 17, 18 years old. He just knew every time the Commodores came to New York, my godfather would send me in the van with them because he didn't have to go to these meetings in these places, but I knew how to get to them. So instead of him riding around, and that's them asking him questions about where, he would give me an address and have me jump in the van. I was in the van the first time they heard Machine Gun on the radio in New York, on the radio. Right. So we're all in the van together and Machine Gun comes on. So I'm the little shorty of the crew. When they came to New York, when they opened up for the Jackson 5, Commodores opened up for the Jackson 5. I don't know if anybody knows that. Their first major tour were a bunch of college kids opening up for a bunch of elementary school kids and high school kids that were rocking the house, so people wanted the Commodores to get off the stage real quick. The Jackson 5 they was the shit. So I went to the show at Madison Square Garden. My godfather grabbed me by the hand. Things are happening I'm not aware of, and things are happening, and this girl screaming, and backstage is busy. Then my godfather grabs me by the hand, opens this door, throws me in, and closes the door behind him, and he goes out. And I looked at him to see, and when I turned around, it's the Jackson 5. I'm in the room with the Jackson 5. He didn't say anything about, I'm taking you, don't say. He just took me by the hand real quick, and he's running and threw me in the room. Hey guys, what do you want, right? Hey guys, so they were all talking in a little group, and they went the same thing, right? Now all of them are looking at me, and I'm looking at, hey, nice to meet you. And I bolted out the door. I don't know what am I going to say? You know what I'm saying? So right after that, My godfather had two more groups under his umbrella, called Platinum Hook, which is a group from New Jersey. They had one album on Motown called Platinum Hook, and they remade um, Parliament's Funkadelic, Standing on the Verge of Getting On.
Right.
And that group came out of a club called the Cellar Restaurant in New York, which was a famous, again, another famous hotspot. And the thing about the Cellar was, if you were a musician or a singer, the band knew every song. You're going to get up on the stage and you're going to show people what you could do.
Right.
In that club, I met Najee, Melissa Morgan, Freddie Jackson, Johnny Kemp, and others. It was the spot where, when Stevie Wonder played the Garden, he would come to the Cellar after the show.
Right.
So it was full of the young talent. I met Najee, met Melissa Morgan. I toured with them. Took my life into other places that I never thought I'd be. And most of my travel has been with word of mouth.
All right. So most people grow up, and back in our day, parents used to always ask us, no matter what age we were, first conversation is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was always, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, or a teacher, or a police officer. I don't think any of us want to be a police officer now, but if that's the case, a good one.
Right.
But it was never ever, until my brother got into the industry,
Right.
and I had already graduated from college, and I had given him some advice. Is that he was working with some groups from our hometown,
Right.
Roger Troutman, Slave, and all of those people, and Ohio Players. And I always told him, I said, life as an entertainer is short lived. Learn how to learn how to mix music, work the keyboard, and
Right.
that
Right.
way you have a skill that you become employable.
Right. That was,
You had a gift that played music, so you can do tuning and play drums and can do studio work. But no one ever said, as a career, you can make a living at being a roadie. How do you negotiate your pay? Because there's some people now that are coming up and that are friends with people in groups, and they are now coming into that position. Because I don't think you can go on Indeed and apply for a job of being a roadie for a group, and it'd be my luck to say that it's going to pop up. Right?
well, it's very funny that you say that, because when I got into those bands in early school, we'd be getting along. We'd have our little rehearsals. We'd do our thing, and then the guitar player's mother would come and say, "My son's not going to be a musician," and take him out the band. Then we find another guitar player, beat him up, whip his ass, get him straight, rehearse him. And then the bass player's mother, "My son's not going to be a musician. This is a hobby. You're right." So what I did was, I thought, I want to be in the place to be, in the room, no matter who's playing. How can I be in the room all the time, but there's a guy over there who's running the sound, and he has to be in that room every night? That's who I want to be.
There you go.
So I took my ego and put it on the side. I don't have to play, but because this is when I'm filling out my applications for jobs, there's no check mark for entertainment or entertainer or musician. There's what have your history been? Oh, I'm a sound engineer. No, where's that listed on a viable career? You see agriculture, you see chemistry, you see, psychology, you see, making cars, what do you,
Right.
and like you, Kevin, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I knew one day Hopefully, I would even get to New Jersey. I used to look out my front window and say, when am I even going to get to New Jersey? Got to New Jersey. When am I ever going to get to California? My first job was working behind the curtain for the Commodores, standing on top of the dry ice machine to make it look like fog was rolling on the floor, and had to drop the dry ice down the chute on cue. I had a cue I had to listen for. So it teaches you discipline, it teaches you patience, and it teaches you focus. Discipline, I got something to do here that's important to the situation. I've seen how it looks out front, and I don't want to fuck it up. So so I'm talking to the band, right? Here's the cue. Here's when you drop it, and here's what you do when you get the chunks of dry ice in the morning. Get a hammer, crack it up, start the thing, make sure the water's hot. I had a job, but I didn't even know I had the job. Now, the run at the Apollo Theater in those days was Thursday through Sunday with 2 shows on Saturday and a matinee on Sunday. So that's where you cut your time on the job training. You repeated it and you repeated it and you repeated it. And that's the easiest job in the world to do, is to figure out your lane, find the best way to do it, and repeat it and repeat it.
All right. Well, all that glitters is not always gold. And that's with the real world life. I talk about all the time how hard life is. And if life wasn't hard, then everyone else would be doing it. Everyone would be successful. I know life as a roadie is not always the most respected position in the band. And there's some people that may look down on the fact that, this is how my guitar gets up here. This is how my bass gets tuned. This is the reason why my drums are set up the way it's set up. This is the reason why the schedule, the song list or the playlist is positioned at a point that's convenient or comfortable for the lead singer, lead guitar player, whatever people overlook that. There's a dark side to this. And we're going to talk more about the positive. You don't have to name names because I don't want, it's not that type of show. Mm-hmm. But tell me the 1 or 2 experiences you had in life that you just woke up and just said, not anymore. I'm done. Or if you've ever gotten to that point, or someone treated you so bad that you just had enough.
Well, yeah, I think, listen, any creative person who's the head of any business or industry, so to speak, we have made many things you can do in life. My parents were hard workers. My father told me, as long as you working, as long as your knees and your hands work, you work. My mother taught me, as long as you're doing something, make it the best. If you're cleaning the street, make it the best street cleaning, and somebody's going to notice. I started breaking away from my family when I was early in life, because I chose to say yes instead of say no. People offer you things, and you can't be afraid of what you don't know.
Right.
So the only thing I do regret, and listen, it's not just for this industry, it's for every industry that you put your heart and your life into. Your family and the people that you love suffer. Our industry requires us to be away from our home on Christmases, holidays, bar mitzvahs, graduations, those family things that you see everybody else normally do around those days. I've been away from my family more Thanksgivings than I've been home for Thanksgiving with my family, with my mother and my brother. I've been away for Christmases and New Year's because you're working. Those are the hot days we work, bringing joy to the world. The good part is one of my dear friends who died, his name was Yogi Horton. He was the number one drummer in New York City. He worked for Ashford and Simpson, Luther Vandross, and played all the commercials. He was the number one chair in the union in New York. And he told me when I started, he's my daughter's godfather. And when I started and we got to talking, he said, Stuart, listen, you are never going to have to go to another party in your life because the party comes to you. The party comes to us. Everybody gets dressed up on Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, when Luther, Ashford, I did every Budweiser Superfest with Ashford and Simpson. 3 shows a week for 8 years. And
Wow.
Budweiser Superfest was the most successful African-American music festival in the history of this country. The Budweiser Superfest.
Wow. I got a funny story to tell you about Ashford and Simpson. New York, I'm brand new to New York. I am a working actor on The Guiding Light. That's where I got my start. I had done a couple commercials. At that time, my first wife was turning 30 years old, and I wanted to make her 30th birthday special. I went down the street, and the first person I saw was Nipsey Russell. I invited him to the party. I wanted to make sure that her party was full of strangers because I wanted to make her comfortable with people. And on Park Avenue, 54th Street, I saw Ashford and Simpson for the first time in my life. And guess who I invited to the party?
Walking the street.
Walking the street. I invited Ashford and Simpson. I 30 strangers to a birthday party of someone they didn't know. Nipsey Russell showed up. Ashford and Simpson showed up. Dougie Doug showed up. These are all strangers. I always said you're only as
And your
strong.
acting friends.
Yep. And you're only as strong as your last no. No one told me no. They were fine. Best party I ever had in my life.
They were
And
beautiful people.
and thanks to my brother Mac Leroy that hooked us up. I had always been around celebrities growing up in my neighborhood, Ohio Players across the street, Lakeside around there, Roger Troutman a couple blocks away. I grew up with all those guys, so I was never starstruck. I would have been starstruck if I had been in the room with Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson and Prince are the two people that I've always wanted to meet. And God welcomed them home long before I got a chance to meet them. So I do want to ask you this, because I know my life has been challenging, even though I'm reaping the benefits of my hard work, and I know you are too. If you had to do it over again, would you do it different?
You know, I don't think the universe would have allowed me to do anything different. My mother, I buried my mother. I have one brother, and he was younger than me. I didn't, I kind of moved out of my house about 16 years old. On my other life, I was actually managing a Baskin Robbins before cutting my last 2 classes of high school. When I was living in Manhattan, I worked at the first Baskin Robbins on 125th Street. It was owned by 2 African American cops, and I got one of the first jobs, brand new store, brand new everything, brand new, right? One of my first, jobs where I got to clock in and clock out. And then my mother and father split up, and we moved to Queens. So when I went, the new Baskin Robbins was opening on Jamaica Avenue, and I went for the interview. And when I got home, my mother said, "Of you, only one that had experience, so you're hired. Go right back because they just hired you." Before I got home, I got hired, but I was cutting my last 2 classes of high school to manage a Baskin Robbins. There was a guy on my block, Ricky Asaf, nicknamed the Honey Man. He was older than me. He was, a couple of 8 years, and he had graduated from Howard Law School. And I walked by him every day, going to work, and me and him gravitated together because we played basketball. And I kind of was a shorty, but I would dust off college, people. I was all stars on my team. But he called me. He said, "Stu, man, I really, really am jealous of you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because here I am, graduated Howard Law School. My last name is Asaf. I'm Islam or Arabic, whatever his parents were." He said, "I see you walking by here, going to work every day, and I don't have a job." And it didn't register with me until later on, that was kind of a thing. I'm working at the ice cream shop, and this guy's family put him through college, but because of his skin, so I never went to college. I never went to college. I sidetracked that experience because everything I did was from common sense. Every job I've ever had, I took the trainings. In the job at the health education, the mail clerk, the guy showed me the machines. I was a machine guy. I was a gadget guy. I took apart my family's iron and my family's transistor radio and put it back together. And I see you smiling, and you got three screws left. When your mother said, "Stop taking apart my," right? I'm taking apart the record player to figure out. So I was that curious guy who wasn't afraid to, fail. I took my mother's iron. She could have whipped me with the cord. But they bought me an erector set. Now you're feeding what I'm gravitating to, an erector sets. For those of you who don't know, Google it. Erector set was an early 70s kit with metal pieces, metal screws and bolts with little batteries you can make and plans you could read and do those things like that.
You know what that's called now? It's called STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. In order to understand that, your brain has to function on a different level in order to erect a set.
And that turned into me. My godfather met this guy named, I'm going to mention his name because he's passed away, Stephen Nomberg. The Nomberg name, if you go to Central Park, the Nomberg name is on the bandshell where the fountain is. There's a bandshell in Central Park called the Nomberg bandshell. Benny, after I'm doing sound now, I'm graduating from just setting up drums in this, I started setting up drums for the Commodores, setting up, pyrotechs and stuff like that. Then I'm graduating to now my ears become my instrument. So I'm doing sound now. My godfather allowed me to mix a symphony orchestra at the Nomberg bandshell in Central Park. I had no idea the difference. They had Macintosh, if anybody knows the Macintosh brand. I had Macintosh preamps, Macintosh amps, and all I knew was the microphone has to go through this to come out to the speaker.
Right.
On every amp, there's only one thing for the speakers. Okay, that has to go here, right? The speakers have to go here. Then I have to get this from this to the amp. Oh, okay. These have to go here. Then I have to get the microphones into the mixer. It was all Class A equipment, a homemade speaker boxes. I didn't, but I'm just remembering these things that, and like if you ever watch Dave Chappelle said, "Listen, if you're a crackhead, you're gonna attract crackheads. If you're a bus driver, you're gonna attract transportation. You're gonna like things that move." I'm a gadget guy, so now I want to know how to do the sound to be with the band wherever they go. That was my goal. I want to be with the band because I notice even when we go overseas, the extra filth, that the extra runarounds that don't have nothing to do with the band, they ain't going on this trip. It's going to be
Right.
one guy in charge, and the guy who's setting up the drums, the guy who's setting up the guitars, the guy who's setting up the keyboards, the
Right.
sound guy, and who else do you really need? Right, right.
That's just proves that you are a smart person. And for our listeners that are just tuning in, we have Douglas Stuart Gray. We're telling the story of the life as a roadie. We're going to bring him back in a couple of seconds, and we're going to talk about him giving back. As you know, this show is about people you should know. We only have guests on here that are adding value to someone else's life, returning something back to the community. We're all about giving back. And we're going to talk about his program that he's going to honor people, the unsung heroes, like a Hall of Fame. I hopefully I got this right. Roadies, no matter what skin color you are, no matter what band you represent, you deserve the recognition because there's no soundstage that hasn't been set up by somebody that doesn't have a name, a public name. There's not one instrument that's been set up on a stage that has not been tuned or placed in a certain place. There is no travel itinerary that's not being managed by someone that is not the lead vocalist or the lead player in a band or a group. And there is no headliner in the stories to be told of the life that a roadie lives and the life he wish he could live and the life he lives behind that he's not living because of his position on the road. But you are the unsung hero to popular groups and stories that are sensationalized and told, and your story needs to be told. So before I go on, Stuart, Mr. Gray, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. My page is wide open. I don't hide anything. STUARTGRAY from New York City, and you'll see all my pictures and all my presence there. I do own a trademark. I trademarked it's called Correct the Culture, and that's my email address, correcttheculture@gmail.com. I am I launched a bunch of products under Correct the Culture, and I'm trying to navigate now back into the culture. And as you can see, I'm very much sensitive and aware to how we can push, our cultures forward, in the spaces that we're allowed to be in. Music and live performance spaces are my strength. So I also belong to another organization. We just had our conference in Atlanta. It's called Roadies of Color United. They're also on Facebook and all of the platforms, Instagram, Roadies of Color United.com or ROCU. Or the matter of fact, I can show you.
Oh, don't leave the show. This
No,
one, keep.
what it looks like.
That's okay. Don't leave it. We'll post it. We have it.
And that's an organization that's been more than 10 years in the making.
You can toss that in.
Excuse me?
I was listening to the phone. I said you can toss that.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't answer.
I was belong to this organization, Roadies of Color United International. We're an international organization highlighting the backstage and the people behind the scenes that you don't see in our industry that put on the festivals, the live concerts, the Super Bowl halftime shows. I have people that just went to, I think it's in California this year where they had doing the halftime Super Bowl shows. And so
let me interrupt you for a second because I want to make sure that Roadies United gets the love that it's supposed to, because this is a thing that I wanted to wrap up the show with. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do your story, because I think it's a story that needs to be told. Um, Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, when they win a championship ring or runner up for the championship, even the gardener, the person that opens the door for the people that come in, they all get a version of the championship ring. In the entertainment world, the only story we ever know is the headliners, whoever's name is on the top of the album, whoever's getting the big paycheck. And you have put together something in order to recognize the unsung heroes in this business. Why was it important for you to put together like a Hall of Fame for roadies? Why are you giving back? What's your motivation behind that?
Well, uh, in the continuation of my story and my godfather, I have now been approved to get a street named after my godfather in Harlem,
And that name will be?
Benjamin Ashburn. It'll
All
be
right.
Benjamin Ashburn Way on the corner of 135th Street and Malcolm and Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard in Harlem. We're getting the signatures together. But
Gotcha.
what struck me as being sort of not being fair is everybody who gets a street named after him, the person has to be deceased. So that doesn't make sense to me. I am more for giving people their flowers while they can be at their own party. So our organization is built on uplifting a segment of the industry that doesn't get too much attention because of partly our skin color, partly because of the groups that we work for. Back in when I was doing this, those groups were more than plentiful. Now they're at a handful. Um, so our organization now is looking to attract the theater and the live concert and the technicians that want to travel the world, understand what it means to be the backbone of somebody else's dreams, because that's what we've been doing. And that's what I kind of gave into. I'm now the main support system of somebody else's dream, putting my dream on the side. Now, that's something that some people, you know, have to measure, take the temperature. I've been doing this now for 50 years. I've had at least one job in those years, at least one job in the year that connects me to this industry. I just was the main front of house sound engineer at Takeoff's Memorial in Atlanta at the State Farm Arena. So again, it takes a whole team of technicians to make that presentation to the world. It's seen by everybody. People show up, and the one thing that I learned about being in this industry is creative people that make records or be on TV, they're still just regular people.
Correct.
And the word celebrity or fan or icon, you can't throw around lightly. Everybody has a bad day, everybody has a good day. Nobody's perfect. But creative people have a different vibe, and I'm attracted to creative people because I like being creative. I'm always thinking about, so that's why I created the Hall of Fame uh, envelope, so to speak, in our Roadies of Color platform that's on Facebook, Instagram, Roadies of Color United International. Um, we are connecting throughout the world our technical brothers and sisters. We have a female that's out on Madonna now, who's doing rigging with the lighting systems. We have females that at our conference that we just had in Atlanta for 3 days. We have sound companies. We have opportunities to work with these different companies with this kind of equipment, all the way from cameras, projection, all the way to audio, lighting. Now the world of LED, and now the world of drones. I'm taking my class to be a commercial drone pilot. I'm also a COVID compliance officer. I'm also a travel agent. So these things, kind of coincide with the things that I'm attracted to. So I will say to young people, go to the spaces, to the things you're attracted to. I didn't know what I was going to be or wanted to do in this life, but I knew I loved music. Music has fed me. I've been to Japan 14 times. I've met Winnie Mandela. I've met some other, Dick Gregory, and just think about the planet, and think about every night in every space of the world, every night there's some kind of entertainment going on. There's somebody with a sound system and a microphone. At every little restaurant, from the solo guy playing the piano in the hallway, to the biggest orchestras and bands, ballets, they all require attention and technical people who want to work behind the scenes. It's just as fulfilling. I did the St. Lucia Jazz Festivals. It's all, and it's all comes back to me as being connected to music. I listen to music daily. My genre of music was probably the most creative space and time before sampling, before people got their own little computers, bands. There are not a lot of bands anymore because everybody has their situation in front of them. There's no community. There's no bouncing off the bass player. Now, let me tell you something about Dayton, Ohio. The reason why Dayton, Ohio is Dayton, Ohio,
Because of fun.
because that Christmas, all of the kids got musical instruments, professional. Just think, I'm not saying it happened, but all of those kids had professional instruments in their houses. Their mothers bought them drums. I worked with 6 groups from Dayton. I was slaves, front of house engineer when Steve Arrington and Steve Washington split up.
Mm-hmm.
It was me, Drac, Danny, Mark Adams, and Steve Arrington and Roger Parker. Dude. Yep. But just think, the same thing in Harlem, we all got unicycles. Just think, if that whole block, we all got professional instruments. It forces you to pick it up and find something to do with it.
Yep.
Every kid in Dayton, Ohio, Mark Drac was 16 when he played that solo on slide. 16 years old. Instruments. I have a thing now where I'm trying to get musical instruments to kids in Africa. I see on Facebook these kids draw pictures of keyboards and mimic to the records they're playing. They want a piano.
You know what I'm going to do? You probably already have a connection. I'm going to connect you to Kool and the Gang's team, because Mr. Bell has a foundation that he does in New Jersey that actually raises money. He has a golf tournament every single year to raise money to give musical instruments to high-risk kids, to keep them off the street, to teach them music. I mean, when we were growing up, that's what we had. That's what our options. There was a system, and probably still is a system, that didn't allow us, people of color, to have the same opportunities. Some of us were able to, we haven't cracked that glass ceiling yet, but we squeaked through some door in order to provide for our families the way that we've had. But that glass ceiling does exist. And, I have to commend you for doing what you've done in this industry. I have to respect you for making the sacrifices, for living your dream. I also have to commend you for using your gift. And that's what people don't realize. God has graced every last one of us with a gift. And you'll hear many motivational speakers, and you sound like a motivational speaker that should be talking to our youth today. Is to, in order to use those gifts, and there are some sacrifices that need to be made in order for you to accomplish everything you have, and then to bring something back like you're doing with the roadies um, program that you're doing. And again, it's open to all races. Just because you say roadies of color, it's not limited to just the people that are melanated. It's open to everyone that is attached, that have made a sacrifice in order to let someone else shine. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I respect you. I think you have a story that needs to be told. And I know everyone, when I announced this, they were looking for some dirt. Our show is not that type of show. Whatever secret you have, and I know me as a professional fitness person, there are some stories that people want us to tell, but it will never tell. And because part of being part of a group, you've got to be trusted. All right.
I'd like to shoot a shot with one of them out there. Listen, it's all character. Let me tell you, there's a if I may, if I have the time,
All right.
there's a
If it's going to hurt somebody else,
no, no,
I
no. It's funny. It's funny. There's a Netflix series called Tales of the Tour Bus.
right. I've seen that.
Okay, so Tales of the Tour Bus was created by Mike Judge, who created Beavis and Butthead. So
Right.
the animation mixed in with live shots, live, right? So the James Brown story. Everybody knows how James Brown, found Bootsy Collins from Cincinnati. James was looking for the band, boom, boom. Bootsy's band and Catfish played nothing but James Brown music. So they were bound to come together, right? So backstage, Bootsy and Catfish are known to take acid. They're taking acid on a regular basis. Whatever strength or whatever they got going on, they're drinking it out the cups, right? They got acid in the cup. So James comes backstage and says, "Hey, man, Bootsy, give me some of what's in that cup. You can't handle this. This is not for you. Take your butt inside, get a Bootsy, give me the cup or else," right? So you've seen the episode, Kevin. I don't know why you all strict. Why you all... So James drinks the acid out the cup, and they don't tell him. They don't tell him what it is. So hour later, he's doing ballets, ballet pirouettes, Lottie Don in his own little capsule world. And I thought that was just great. That's how it happens. And I don't think James ever touched this stuff again. That's
No.
all he needs.
All right. So on that note, um, I'm gonna ask one more time. Let people know how to get in touch with Roadies of Color. How to get in touch, and if they're going to refer someone to it, if someone wants to enter their name into it, explain how it works. We just had a session. Was it September 28th to the 30th? You just had this in
It's at
Georgia.
a conference. Yes.
Missed that.
Yes.
And it happens every year, so it's an annual thing. And you're honored people. I know you've got a plaque behind you that you've been awarded something that you've earned.
Mhm.
I know my brother has been with Ohio players. He fits in that category with working with Ohio players, and you've worked with many groups in Ohio and all over the world, Commodores. And hope Lionel Richie hears that and says, "Hey, what's up?" And I hope the Jackson Five realize that fan just as much as you're a good person working with the groups. I hope that people listening to your story look at some of the life-changing events and advice that you've given them, because I've been motivated by things you've said. You've repeated some of the things that I say in my presentations when I'm speaking. I'm proud of you, young brother. I am very proud of you.
Thank you
Been
so
in
much.
this business a long time, made some sacrifices, and had a lot of great success. So tell everyone how they can reach you.
Stuart Gray on Facebook, StuartGray. My membership, you can I have nothing to hide. I have all my pictures there. Correct the Culture on Instagram, correcttheculture@gmail.com, because I that kind of filled my space of head when I created it. We have to correct our culture. And
That,
when you correct our culture, there's a whole list. I left it open for interpretation. So I didn't want to pinpoint, correct our music culture, correct our life culture, correct our job culture. It's a whole list. Correct our political cultures. So
right. Well,
that's I want to
that,
leave the
we have a lot of people that follow us. Um, and we have a lot more people that listen to our podcast, and I hope they view and share this. But I want to ask you one question, because this is something that when I started this company, RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network, it wasn't part of the original plan. I always say I'm building a plane while flying, while running this business. I've had 4 people going on into my second year of doing this podcast, talking with Kevin and Son. And I do another one on Sundays, Motivational Sundays with Kevin and Friends, which is an open platform talking about quotes. But I've had 4 people that when I've asked this question, that one of my listeners has granted them their wish.
Mhm.
People always tell me that they can show me how to have thousands and hundreds of views and followers and whatever. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for people and surround myself, like my success in my business, of people that have a higher call to action, people that get stuff done. So my whole circle is powerful, positive people,
Yeah.
people that we're mentoring, people are growing up, or people that have been in the position that we want to be in, that's giving back. They
Mhm.
don't drive by an accident, they stop to help. So if I were to ask you your one ask, if you have one thing that you can ask for that you would like to come true. Now remember, there's 4 people in this world right now that have been guests on this podcast, that some people go through their whole life and don't have one dream come true. And someone has granted them that gift. I don't know who it is and when it will happen, but we do have people that are making a difference and giving back. What would your one ask be, sir, Mr. Gray?
Um, that people understand that um, nothing is promised. Um, anything that's successful should be hard to get, and understand that there's space for everybody. There's space. Everybody that's on this planet is here for a reason. That they occupy a space for a reason. So let a person find their space. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. You know, it's hard. It's hard for us sometimes to stay in our lanes. We want to judge and not be judged. Stay in your lane, what the universe has provided to you. Say yes and share love, and more than saying no and negativity, because it does transfer through everything that's living, plants, trees, and from the sky to the sea. Every living thing deserves a space. Let them have their space, because you can't take none of this with you. You know, you can't take any of it with you. Teach the next generation what respect is, how to respect everything that's living and every life that's on this planet. The one thing I take from the Bible is do unto others, and I only use that because if you don't want anybody killing you, don't kill anybody. If you don't want anybody stealing from you, don't steal. You don't need to segregate it. Do unto others. Think of you in that person's shoes. You're walking over me like I'm invisible. You're talking over me like I don't know what I'm talking about. Those are, but do unto others as you would have them do unto you is my main message.
Brother, Douglas, I know you as Stuart Gray, Mr. Gray. Grew up with a Southern boy, so I'm going to acknowledge you. It's amazing. I have yet to have nearly 200 people on this show and ask that question. And I've only had one person ask something for their personal self. You are the third person that your ask turned into giving something to someone else. And that's a very selfless act to give that type of advice, to share your passion for what you do, to be compassionate and giving back to the human race. So with that said, to my listeners, we've covered a lot of information. I want to thank you for riding with us, listening to Douglas Stewart's Gray on life of being a roadie. Who is that on your shirt?
That's my godfather in the middle and two of the Commodores.
All right, all right, all right. So
That's
with
why. That's why. Kind of, give my professional life. He's the reason that I've traveled the world, and I always respect that. He
and,
gave,
and
he gave me he gave me the space because he knew that's the space I wanted to occupy.
all right. So we're gonna wrap this up. And again, connecting to your faith, and that's one of the things that gives us life, to believe in something. Dreams do come true. You have acknowledged the fact that life is hard. It takes hard work, but opportunity is plentiful for those that look for opportunity and do the work they have to do in order to do that. And if something that was said changes your view or changes the way you feel about not only the world but humanity itself, then we've done our job. I want to thank everyone for following us. I want to thank everyone that has listened to us longer than 4 minutes. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions. If you like what you've heard and you want to see more of what we've done, not only today, but in the past, go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. If you'd like to be a guest or have a story that needs to be told, go to info@rmkproductions.org. Put your information. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you on a guest. We showcase people that you should know. My grandfather always said, when you get to a point in life that you can help someone, like Mr. Gray here, it is your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. I'm going to drop another thing on your hashtag. Find 1,000 reasons to be kind to someone. It doesn't kill you, to give some love. And with that said, we're going to fade to black and thank Mr. Gray for coming in and sharing our story, sharing his story, sharing his experience, and giving us some advice and giving his heart to people that normally would have been forgotten. And with that said, we'll fade to black.